What is the price of our inheritance? God didn't give us the land of Israel for it to become a place of intolerance. God didn't guide Abraham and Sarah to our ancient homeland to deprive Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Christians of our basic humanity, our deepest sense that we're a part of a greater collective whole. Lech lecha, we read today, go forth. Go to yourself, go for yourself, for your benefit. Not tza'ak lecha, shout for your benefit. Not biyesh lecha, shame others for your benefit. Not sna lecha, hate for your benefit. Lech lecha, go forth. And then another imperative, v'yeh bracha, be a blessing. A couple weeks ago, Donald Trump wrote, U.S. Jews have to get their act together and appreciate what they have in Israel before it's too late. You know who said something similar? Mayor Kahana. In November 1990, Kahana gave a speech in Brooklyn where he warned American Jews to emigrate to Israel before it was, quote, too late. Afterward, a crowd gathered around Kahana in the second floor lecture hall in Midtown Manhattan, and then Kahana was assassinated. Trump, an American ex-president and grandfather to Jewish grandchildren, said American Jews need to appreciate him more like American evangelicals do, and like Israeli Jews do. Kahana, an American pulpit rabbi, espoused virulently racist views, saw Arabs as enemies and wished to expel them from the land of Israel, formed the Jewish Defense League, and served time for conspiring to manufacture explosives. In 1966, already married and using a false name, he had an illicit affair with young model Estelle Evans, who 13 years his junior and smitten with Kahana, thought that she had met the man that she would marry. When 7 months later, Kahana sent a letter confessing that he'd lied about who he was, that he was married with children, and that he would not be contacting her again, Evans threw herself from the Queensboro Bridge, dying soon after of internal injuries. In 1971, Kahana made Aliyah and formed the Kach Party. In 1984, he was elected to Knesset. Then Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir, former head of Lech, a group formed because its adherents thought the Irgun was simply too moderate, would walk out of Knesset when Mayor Kahana spoke. Eventually, the Kach Party was banned from Israeli politics because of its racist views. But now, former Kach member Itamar Ben-Gvir and his partner Bezalel Smotrich have won 14 seats, making them currently Israel's third largest party. And soon-to-be Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu will almost certainly ask them to join the coalition, and Ben-Gvir is likely to become a cabinet minister so that Bibi can avoid prison on corruption charges. What will be the price for this arrangement, as if the miscarriage of justice isn't enough? Consider that Ben-Gvir used to have a picture of mass murderer Baruch Goldstein in his home, or that he brandished his sidearm in East Jerusalem recently and called on Jewish Israelis to shoot Arabs who throw stones. Guys, if they throw rocks, shoot them, he said. Or consider that Itamar Ben-Gvir, as a cabinet minister, hopes to establish a ministry to encourage migration for Israel's Palestinian citizens and those living under occupation alike. European countries need working hands, he said, as justification. In 1958, Rabbi Meir Kahana tried to remake a conservative shul in Queens into an Orthodox bastion of Jewish nationalist extremism. In 2022, his legacy threatens to remake the State of Israel into something similar. In fact, these forces might very well remake Israeli democracy into something less democratic, or chas v'shalom, something truly undemocratic. Lech Lecha. This Shabbat, we should consider what inheritance means, what power means, what governing means. When God tells Abraham to go forth, there are expectations and conditions. Jews too can pollute the land. The land is sacred, and so are human beings. All of them, each of us, are created b'tselem Elohim, in God's image. Now, I'm not making the audacious or anachronistic claim that Torah espouses democracy or democratic values in the same way that we think of them now. What I'm saying is that there are Jewish first principles revealed in the biblical narrative, and that recent trends are anathema to those principles. Lech Lecha. The first parsha is about the first Jewish family and how it deals with inheritance of a land, of a nation. The rest of the Torah is about how we earn that inheritance. Here in America, the Jewish community has been understandably focused of late on Kyrie Irving and his hateful views, or Kanye's bile and how quickly other haters have capitalized on this moment with large public projections, memes, and signs saying Kanye was right. But let's not also forget, or let's also not forget, that bigotry and discrimination are no strangers to Jewish leaders and thinkers. After the Israeli election this week, Haaretz ran a photograph from 2016 on its editorial page featuring shirts and other merchandise saying, Kahana Tzadak. Kahana was right. No, Ben Gvir and his ilk are not right. They are in fact wrong. And we should say so in the strongest possible terms, just as we should say that Kanye is not right. Here's a bit of that editorial board statement from Haaretz a few days ago, the headline of which was, Kahanism won, Israel is now closing in on a right-wing religious authoritarian revolution. Religious Zionism, the Knesset list that distorted the Zionist project and transformed it from the national home of the Jewish people into a project of conservative, right-wing, racist, religious Jewish supremacism in the spirit of Ben Gvir's teacher and Rabbi Meir Kahana, is now the third largest political force in Israel. The op-ed lists some potential outcomes of a right-wing bloc government with its expected composition. Some may be overblown. All are plausible. Here they are. Fire the Attorney General. Split the role of Attorney General. Legislate an override clause that will allow the Knesset to legislate whatever it wants, even laws that are unconstitutional. Allow the Knesset to select Supreme Court justices. Restrict freedom of expression and persecute journalists, Arabs, leftists, and members of the LGBTQ community. Now, I don't believe all of these things will happen, but they could. As someone who believes in the importance of a democratic Israel, this concerns me. I think it should concern us. Now, I understand I offer these words at a time when it's not just the democratic values of liberal Zionism that feel under attack. On this side of the Atlantic, democracy is also under attack. This coming Tuesday, Americans will head to the polls. Many already have. We do so against the backdrop of increasing political violence, including an assault on 82-year-old Paul Pelosi in his home, in his sleep. Fully 370 Republican candidates on the ballot this coming week have questioned the legitimacy of the 2020 election. Hundreds of them are favored to win. As for the ones that do not, many of them may very well question the legitimacy of their own defeat. And many of their supporters are armed and itching for a fight. Itamar Ben-Gvir drew his sidearm. Militias here in America could very well do much worse. If January 6th showed us anything, it's that much worse than what most of us thought was possible is truly possible. I mentioned the matzav, the situation over here, along with the matzav over there, not to conflate the two. These are different countries with different political landscapes, cultures, and histories. But there are trends, global authoritarian trends, that are infecting democratic strongholds around the world. There are those who think democracy is simply about winning at all costs, maintaining power at all costs, achieving one's judiciary or statutory goals at all costs. If democracy is an inheritance worth fighting for, Chavre, this is a moment to do so. This Shabbat stands between a devastating outcome in Israel and a potentially terrifying one here in the US. But today, as we read this auspicious parsha about the formation of Jewishness, we also stand between two dates that each commemorates a vicious attack on that Jewishness. One was an attack from our neighbors, the other was an attack from our own. Yesterday, Eliyah, Shamir, Miriam, and the Jewish student group of the Baltimore School for the Arts welcomed Ms. Herta Beich to BSA. Ms. Beich enraptured the full student body with her devastating and heartfelt tale of survival and displacement, her escape to Baltimore from Vienna, the murder of her parents in the camps. Herta visited because of next week's observance of Kristallnacht, the two-day pogrom that saw the desecration and destruction of synagogues, the murder and deportation of Jews, and the beginning of the worst phases of the Shoah. I was so proud of my kids for arranging this event, particularly in light of the swastikas that had been written and that I told you about a couple of weeks ago. And I'm proud of the BSA faculty and student body who showed up with curiosity, love, and respect to hear her story. It's been rightly said that the state of Israel isn't a product of the Shoah. Zionism predates the Holocaust by decades, and Chibat Zion, our yearning for Eretz Yisrael, is much more ancient. But if there is one Jewish lesson Torah is meant to teach, it is that there are right and wrong reactions to our historical trauma. From slavery in Egypt, we learned about how best to advocate for those in need, enslaved or marginalized. 36 times we're told some version of Ki Gerim Hayitem, you were strangers in a strange land, so you must recognize and respond to that experience in others. From the Shoah, we learned not only what it is to look into the face of evil, but how hate becomes weaponized, systematized, slowly, methodically. As Herta and her husband Art explained to the high school students at BSA, the Nuremberg race laws were gradual. They were strategic. The drip, drip, drip of othering, come distancing, come suppressing, come expelling, come imprisoning, come murdering. Im tirtzu enzo agada, said Herzl. If you yearn it, work for it, it is simply not a dream. One person who believed in that dream was Yitzhak Rabin, which brings us to our second commemoration. 27 years ago, yesterday, he was gunned down by a militant Jewish religious zealot. But Rabin's murder didn't happen in a vacuum. Benjamin Netanyahu, then leader of the opposition in Knesset, attended a right-wing political rally in Jerusalem where protesters branded Rabin a traitor and murderer and Nazi for signing a peace agreement with the Palestinians earlier that year. While Bibi didn't use these words himself, his presence and that of other senior Likud officials helped to incite violence. At one protest, Bibi marched as demonstrators behind him carried a mock coffin. Yaakov Katz, editor-in-chief of the center-right Jerusalem Post, in a much-discussed op-ed a couple weeks before this past week's election, explained that Netanyahu's decision to make common cause with Ben-Gvir has done wonders to help legitimize him in the eyes of many Israelis. And what of Ben Gvir? What was he up to in those fateful days of incitement leading up to Rabin's assassination on November 4th, 1995? It was actually then, in late October of that year, a much younger Ben Gvir came to public attention for the first time, when he appeared on television brandishing a Cadillac emblem that he had stolen from Rabin's car. In that television interview, this new member of Knesset, perhaps soon to be cabinet minister, declared, "We got to his car and we'll get to him too." Lech Lecha. God said to Abraham, "Go forth, go to yourself, go for yourself." What, my friends, is the price of our inheritance? It is, at the very minimum, to serve as caretakers and custodians. It is to espouse and to fulfill democratic values. It is to honor the rule of law and create laws that honor humanity. Eizehu mechobad, asks Rabbi Shimon ben Zoma, who is honored? Hamechabed et habriot, the one who honors his fellow human beings. The proof text brought in Pirkei Avot for this famous teaching is instructive. Ki mechabdai achabed uvozai yeklu. For I honor those who honor me, and those who spurn me shall be dishonored. What's the move that Ben Zoma is making? To dishonor humans is to dishonor God. To dishonor humans, not Jews, people. Meir Kahane wasn't just a criminal and a racist. His worldview was a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name, what he stood for. What Ben Gvir and the vocal minority who espouse his views stand for is a Chilul Hashem. To deny and delegitimize free and fair elections is a Chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name. To do violence or incite violence against those who would participate in such elections, this too is a Chilul Hashem. Lech Lecha. What is the price of our inheritance? The price is this. It is to ask, upon our arrival and every day thereafter, where must we go from here? Shabbat Shalom.